All right, let's just jump right into this explainer. We're going to translate the absolute latest exercise science into a step-by-step blueprint for building massive triceps. You know, if you've been putting in the work at the gym, but your arms are still looking, well, a little flat, you're in the right place. We're going to dig deep into the data and the biomechanics to figure out exactly how to carve out that really impressive horseshoe shape.
Here's a quick look at our syllabus for today. We've got the anatomy of the horseshoe, stretch versus peak contraction, triceps myths and biomechanics, the best triceps exercises, our 2-day beginner weekly split, and finally a 4-week safe progression plan. So before we hit the gym floor, let's just quickly align on a couple of foundational concepts. You're going to hear the terms hypertrophy and mechanical tension quite a bit here. Just remember, hypertrophy, that simply means muscle growth. That's the whole end goal, right? And mechanical tension? Well, that's the heavy lifting. It's the actual physical force and stretch required to trigger that growth.
Section 1. Anatomy of the horseshoe. Let's get right to it.
Okay, so understanding how your triceps are actually built is literally the key to growing them. The triceps obviously have 3 distinct heads. You've got the lateral and medial heads. Those are the ones that extend the elbow, giving you that nice side profile and your overall pushing strength. But the long head, that is the real star of the show for arm size. It's the largest part, making up the bulk of the mass at the back of your arm. But here's the absolute secret sauce. The long head also crosses the shoulder joint. What does that mean? It means exactly how you position your shoulder completely dictates how much this massive head actually grows.
Moving right along to Section 2, stretch versus peak contraction.
So, how do we actually manipulate that shoulder joint to get the absolute most growth? Well, there are 2 core biomechanical training philosophies we need to look at. First, when you raise your arms completely overhead, you stretch that massive long head across both the elbow and the shoulder. This puts the muscle under incredibly high tension at a long length. On the flip side, if you want peak contraction intensity, you bring your arms fully behind your torso. Think of a kickback, right? That forces the muscle into a fully shortened, super intense, almost cramped state. A perfect routine for that aesthetic horseshoe? It absolutely has to use both of these joint angles. But if we just look at the core biomechanical principles, the stretch is totally king for pure hypertrophy. Current biomechanical evidence actually shows that stretch-based movements improve muscle growth dramatically. Why? Because the long head is subjected to really high tension in a deeply lengthened position. Getting a 40% increase in growth just by putting your arms overhead instead of leaving them down at your sides, that is a massive win for your training efficiency.
Up next, Section 3, triceps myths and biomechanics. Knowing this data is crucial, which brings us to busting some common training myths highlighted by major exercise scientists. It's time to unlearn some bad habits, folks. A lot of people absolutely love standard dumbbell kickbacks, but EMG data from top scientists proves they have a terrible resistance curve. Think about it. The dumbbell offers literally 0 tension when the muscle is stretched. It only gets heavy at the very top of the movement. Also, everyone seems to think rope press downs are this magic bullet for the lateral head. Actually, they hit the long head super heavily, unless you purposely pull your elbows backward behind your body to induce active insufficiency. That basically shortens the long head, so the lateral head is forced to take over the work. Crazy, right?
Section 4, the best triceps exercises. Let's get into the good stuff.
Okay, enough theory, let's get to the gym floor and detail the specific exercise variations that perfectly match these distinct training goals. When matching exercises to your mechanical tension focus, an overhead cable extension is hands down your ultimate weapon for long head development because of that deep stretch. Now, if you want a peak contraction, a cable kickback is vastly superior to a dumbbell because the cable provides constant tension throughout the whole movement. And for heavy mechanical tension, the close grip bar press down is absolutely fantastic for targeting those lateral and medial heads. Now, let me put on my physical therapist hat for just a second because from an injury prevention standpoint, protecting your elbows and shoulders is absolutely key for long-term growth. When doing kickbacks, the data tells us to lock those elbows right at your sides. When doing bench dips, a huge mistake is rounding the shoulders forward. Instead, open your palms, turn your hands outward, and keep that chest up to avoid shoulder impingement. And please, for the love of your joints, avoid flaring your elbows excessively on skull crushers. Honestly, you can even swap the barbell for dumbbells to easily clear your head and safely perform the lowering or eccentric portion of the lift.
Section 5, 2-day beginner weekly split.
Now that we have the right exercises in form, let's piece it all together into a highly effective weekly split for 2 sessions. Why 2? Well, we split this up because science shows a muscle can be safely and effectively re-stimulated for growth roughly every 72 hours. Training them just once a week is literally leaving growth on the table. So your week is going to look something like this. Session 1 focuses on heavy pushdowns and lying dumbbell extensions. This hits the heavy tension and that deep stretch. Then you take a couple of days to recover the arms while working other parts of the body. Session 2 utilizes heavily contracted movements, getting those elbows behind the torso, and then finishes with a bodyweight burnout. It is perfectly balanced.
Now you might be wondering, how many sets should you actually do? Well, that really depends on your schedule. If you're plugging these sessions onto the end of a chest day, keep your volume lower, around 7 total sets, because the triceps are already fatigued from all those pushing movements. But if you're dedicating a day purely to arms, you can safely bump that up to 10 sets for a standalone workout.
Let's talk rep ranges. Because your triceps are primarily composed of fast-twitch type 2 muscle fibers, they respond incredibly well to heavy weight. As a coach, I'd suggest doing 6 to 8 reps to optimize strength on your heavy compound movements like close grip presses. Then push to 10 to 15 reps for your lighter, deep stretch isolation work to really maximize that hypertrophy.
Here is your clear, step-by-step guide to a typical gym visit. Step 1. Warm up those elbows. Seriously, don't skip this. Step 2. Hit a heavy compound movement when you're at your freshest. Step 3. Move right into an overhead extension to get that deep stretch on the long head. And finally, Step 4. Finish up with a peak contraction or a bodyweight burnout like a diamond or cobra push-up to completely exhaust the muscle. This hits every single functional angle without overcomplicating things.
I know what some of you are probably thinking, but what if I only have basic equipment? Look, if you have limited access to cable machines, this foundational dumbbell-only routine perfectly mirrors the exact same biomechanical principles. You still get your heavy compound, your overhead stretch, your peak contraction, and your burnout, all using just a simple flat bench and some dumbbells.
Our final section, 4-week safe progression plan.
To ensure long-term joint health and actual noticeable hypertrophy, we have to master progressive overload safely. You can't just throw heavier weights around every single week and expect your elbows to survive the process. So, to execute this safely, the sources outline a simple 4-week progression plan. In week 1, focus purely on form, correct arm positioning, and those deep stretches. In week 2, don't up the weight, just add a rep or 2. By week 3, add an intensity technique, like an eccentric-only set. And then, only increase the physical weight on the bar or dumbbell once your reps are completely maxed out by week 4. This is exactly how you grow without getting injured.
The science is completely clear, the routine is set, the rep ranges are mapped out, and the myths are officially busted. So the only provocative question left is, are you ready to stop guessing, actually hit the gym, and put this biomechanical blueprint to the test to carve out that massive horseshoe? Get out there, start stretching and contracting those triceps, and we'll see you next time on The Explainer.